affect the offensive decision making of opponents when he's on the floor with his length, with his athleticism, with his chaos inducing activity. In addition to when he's featured on the floor with Kevin Durant, in addition to when he's also featured with Jusuf Nurkic protecting the basket, that allows for him to play with that kind of randomness defensively that is impactful.
Because he had a not the greatest Bol Bol game tonight. Only 8 points for him, 1 for 5. Sorry, 8 minutes, 1 of 5 for the field. Only 3 points for Bol Bol. But it didn't feel like he really got to play through a lot of his problems. And we were talking about that pregame, Steven, that you kind of just need to like let him cook a little bit, even when he's not cooking, because you want to see what he can do, even when he hits a little bit of adversity.
Yeah, I struggle. Though I do understand, why Frank features him the way that he does, because you can't just, throw Bol in whatever lineup and it works the way you can with like a Kevin Durant type player. He has to be insulated in a certain way for him to be effective, especially depending on, who your opponent is. I just feel like he's still in that space where he's trying to earn the trust of Frank Vogel. And there's a spotlight on him for sure. And I like that, even regardless of a night like tonight, that he's not out there playing with hesitation. He's playing still free, which is where he's obviously optimized. When he's not put in a box and he's able to just be Bol and be just kind of just a random chaos creator on offense and defense, that's when he's at his best. So I think these games like this one, obviously they're going to desire to see more from him, but they're important in process and figuring out how to feature him going forward and what matchups he might work better in versus the ones that he might not work as well in. So I think it's just kind of back and forth there with that.
Yeah, like with Bol, right? Like I get it. He wasn't great this game. Usually when you've seen him plugged in, and he's playing with the Nurk or with the KD, and definitely with one of the big three and the big two guards out there as well. So he's never just out there and it's Bol time, right? Like we're just going to go through and Bol's going to dribble it up the court like he did in Orlando and take a step back three like he did in like that's not happening, right? But in a game like this, where everything is so ugly. Like the offense was ugly tonight. Like it had good moments, but overall, I mean, shooting percentage wise, like there was some pretty ugly bricks here, man. Like we were watching and Grayson Allen missed the entire rim. Eric Gordon had the loudest brick I think I've ever heard in my entire life. And they had good games, but those were still happening, right? I feel like this is the time the Charlotte Hornets on Friday, March 15th. You need to let Bol play through this type of stuff. And I'm not just sitting there going and saying that because I think he's a fun commodity and he deserves 30 minutes a game and should be in the Suns starting lineup. But if you don't look at Bol right now and think this is a guy that can swing 5 minutes in a playoff series for us, then you haven't been watching Suns basketball, or at least you haven't been watching it right, because at his best, at his peak, he can swing that. But today, that wasn't the case. But he got the plug pulled. I think he played 5 minutes in the first half, 3 minutes in the second half, and he just didn't get a chance to go out there and get a rhythm. And that's really big for basketball players. Aaron, I know you play basketball every single week. Like sometimes you get out there in the first 5 to 10 minutes that you're hooping, you're like, I'm not really feeling this. That you work up a sweat, you get a little bit out of breath, and you start just to have it come more naturally. I feel like they need to do that with Bol. Do you agree?
You kind of, like I said earlier, like you kind of have to keep a short leash. Like you got to let them kind of figure it out, but you kind of have to keep the short leash too. In October, November, December, yeah, you could have done this. Those are the easy games. Like, but to be trying out the Bol experiment, as good as it has been, how fun as it has been, how confident he looks now, I think trying that now when you're in the play-in technically and you're trying to get out of it, you can't really test out the Bol situation as much as you probably want it to early on. It's kind of just too late, and you got to start figuring out how the big three can click before even trying to make Bol click.
But they didn't try it earlier, right? And like you're right. Listen, in a perfect world, I would have loved for them to initially implement him, but maybe the reason why he's come in and been able to have an impact is because they just took him aside and said, "We're going to work on you. We're going to coach you. We're not just going to throw you in a game and let you go out there and burn everything to the ground. Like we're going to work on everything with you, and then we're going to slowly integrate you." And we got to the point where he was playing close to 20 minutes in a game, right? And so to me, it's not just this is the Bol Bol experiment now. Like I think you've seen enough to know that he can be a positive player for you. And with Eubanks playing the way that he is, with Thad Young getting absolutely no minutes, you traded away all your other big forwards. Like there is room for him to be a backup here for Kevin Durant. There's room for him to play with Kevin Durant. You can fit him into a lot of different lineups. I don't like him playing with Eubanks, but he can. I'd prefer Nurk, Bol, KD, and I think there were some people in the in the chat who are asking for that lineup as well. So I don't know if I'm sitting here saying it's the Bol Bol experiment. Like I get it, you haven't been able to see enough of him yet, but from what I have seen, like he has shown that he can play and he can hoop. So like if you have to put on, your genie hat, Steven, look at your crystal ball and say it's let's say the Suns make it out of the play-in, or they're not in the play-in in the first place, whatever, and they're playing a first round matchup in the West. You're going to be playing somebody tough. 8, 9, 10 minutes into the game, are you looking down and expecting Bol Bol to check in for the Phoenix Suns?
Yeah, I actually wrote about Bol maybe about 5 or 6 weeks ago over at Bright Side of the Sun, and just kind of assessing at that moment in time the impact that he had, which had them performing with him on the floor as the best defense in the league in defensive rating. There's just, for a team like I talked about in pregame that has a size issue in terms of how many guards are featured in their main rotation, to have a piece that can go out and contest shots and just affect the offensive decision making of opponents when he's on the floor with his length, with his athleticism, with his chaos inducing activity. In addition to when he's featured on the floor with Kevin Durant, in addition to when he's also featured with Jusuf Nurkic protecting the basket, that allows for him to play with that kind of randomness defensively that is impactful. And when this team is up in the activity levels defensively, and then they're playing out in transition, that's some of the best that this team can kind of weed through their offensive process. And I think Bol really puts them in those positions just off of what he does as his baseline. We're not even talking about him doing anything exceptional in terms of the box score. Just him being a presence out there on defense has so much value for this team. And I think, again, when he's featured the right way with Nurkic and with Kevin Durant, you're able to kind of see and reap the benefits of doing so in the manners in which he can be featured.
I think it's pretty clear that Bol Bol is still earning some trust from his coaching staff.